If you're a Michigan football fan, you got to do one of two things today. You got to watch your team play, either if you went down to the big house or tuned in to national television to watch it on Fox. You might have done both, like I did. Let's talk about the annual spring game, the first under Sherrone Moore, new coaching staff, new playmakers. We're going to get into all of it on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.
Happy Saturday. You might see me caffeinating here and there throughout this evening. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I promised you a Saturday night, and I said night because I kind of had the feeling when not in season mode, the one-off spring game being on field turf. I've told you I have a field turf allergy. One thing it does is it makes me really sleepy whether or not I take Benadryl. So knew it was going to be take a little bit to rally. But we are going to rally. We have rallied. We are here. We are here to talk about the spring game. We'll get into my takeaways. We'll get into players that I thought really stepped up. But overall, I thought it was a generally good day. I think that Michigan kind of got everything out of it that it needed. I don't think that you're necessarily looking for a spectacular player. You're not looking for, I saw like Arch Manning at Texas had like 275 yards. I don't think Michigan's looking for that type of thing, right? They weren't even like going to give us stats, right? They did keep some, but it was kind of very unofficial. Like they were really truly treating this as a practice. Like, oh, you made a mistake. Well, we're going to work on it. Just happens to be in front of everybody. It's less of a showcase and more of an opportunity in the same way that the other practices are. So that said, we will look at some of the stats, but it's kind of funny because on the sidelines, I did not feel like it was going very well. And then I thought about it a little bit before I got to the post-game interviews. And I was like, actually, I don't think it went as bad as I even was thinking. And then I got the stats and I'm like, okay, that actually, because you would have asked me like, overall, what did the quarterbacks look like? I would have been like, they were as a group probably throwing around like 30%, which is not the case. I mean, certainly there were some that were like Jaden Davis was 2 for 4. Jaden Denegal was 2 and 6, 2, 6 and 1 really. But Davis Warren and Alex Orji were very accurate. They did a very good job with what they were asked to do. And kind of like what we talked about in the spring preview, like when you saw a little bit of inaccuracy early. Orji missed his first couple passes, but then he kind of settled in, right? So he missed 5 and overall, but 2 of them were they came on his first 2 pass attempts. You only had really one throw where you kind of had to do the Devin Bush. This is from a video I took, so this is not like a wide lexicon thing that everyone should know, but just like what you throwing at? That's that. There was only one of those. Davis Warren looked very good with the deep ball, of course, and I think that's necessary for the sake of. I talked to someone after the game on the field. Because I just remember the tons of people that accuse me like, oh, Isaiah doesn't know or talk to anybody. I'm not saying this to be like, oh, look at me. I'm saying it to be like, you should know that I am on the field. So whoever I talked to was someone reputable. But I do not believe, barring like just a perfect scenario, that they are going to add anyone at quarterback in the transfer portal. Like the expectation, I was flat out told like, the time to get a quarterback in the transfer portal is in January, not in April, May. So do not expect Michigan to ride with anyone else. What they have is what they have. Certainly, Jack Tuttle will join in into the competition eventually. He's very much could, if all you need is like a Cade McNamara type, I think that they probably have that one way or another. And I mean, heck, they could kind of do what like Alabama and Clemson did back in the day. Granted, those were with like 4 and 5 stars. I mean, they got a couple 4 stars on this team too. Jaden Denegal is a 4-star. Jaden Davis was at one time a 5-star, ended up being a 4-star. Jack Tuttle was a 4-star. So it's not like they're bereft of talent. But they might play a couple, if it hasn't been settled. I mean, we even saw that in Ann Arbor with Caden and JJ. They might play a couple and try to figure things out. But overall, when I went and did the rewatch of the game, it's because sometimes from field level things might look way more off from depending on my vantage point than they were, and I was actually much more impressed with what I saw from those two guys. Jaden Davis, even the one that was incomplete to Peyton O'Leary, where Jair Hill knocked it out of his hands, kind of like Mikey Sanders still and Cade Stover. I thought that was like a perfectly placed throw. And there were just some moments where, maybe some of the youth on the offensive line didn't necessarily work out. But overall, I also thought the offensive line and defensive lines looked good, which is it's funny to kind of be able to even say that because it's difficult to glean because you're not looking at a one-on-one type of scenario, right? Like these aren't all comprised of starters. You might have, you have Mason Graham next to a walk-on whose name you haven't heard before type of thing, right? So it's not always necessarily going to give you the exact understanding of what it's going to look like, which is kind of why I said we need to go on a by-player type of evaluation when it comes to the spring game. But with that in mind, I thought the lines looked good. Every position group had a moment to shine, kind of except for kicker, which is not great. Punter obviously too because they didn't have punts. But it's unfortunate that Adam Samaha missed a 30-yarder. The other kicker, if there was one, didn't do anything. Hudson Hollenbeck did fine. Keep in mind he transferred in last year from Mississippi State, if memory serves correctly. There, it was either Ole Miss or Mississippi State. I think it was Mississippi State. So they have. I think that might be still a little bit of a question, but outside of that, I think you got a little bit of everything from a little bit of everybody, right? Running backs looked good, kind of. I don't want to say top to bottom. I'm a little disappointed we didn't really see Cole Cabana. He was dressed and everything. But overall, it's like, Tavier Dunlap ended up leading in rushing overall in this scrimmage. 15 carries, 66 yards, average of 4.1, 61 yards. He had a 5-yard loss. So he ended up leading everyone. Obviously, Donovan Edwards comes out of the gates and kind of looks more like Blake Corum than Donovan Edwards in some respects. And he looks a lot more like he did in 2022, right? Because I thought that one of the things, we've talked about this on the show about Donovan, is that they were asking him to be a little bit more patient with the block setting up. And it kind of felt like, I think that one run early on, he sees the edge and just hits the edge. He isn't going to wait for the blocks. He just hits the edge. A couple times the first carry, he made it through a very tiny hole. And he had that kind of, as he used to talk about, the Blake Corum shimmy. So I think you see some improvement there. Wide receiver, I felt like there were some real positives there at wide receiver. Kendrick Bell was on my list. He and Frederick Moore were the guys that were on my list. I could have put Tyler Morris. He's being spoken of very highly in the building. I've had some conversations even, in the last 24 hours before the spring game. And Tyler Morris was kind of being talked about as, like, you have to remember how good he can be, and like he's really taken that step up and all of that. But I still wanted to see who some of those other guys are. I wanted to see Frederick Moore be the guy that they've talked about. You saw that speed on display. We talked yesterday about Kendrick Bell needing to take that step up. Not only did he score a touchdown, he had the key block that really finished out Frederick Moore's touchdown. I just was very impressed with him. So I think that you saw a lot from that. And then you go to the other side of the ball. I think defensively, you look at some of these other guys that were really kind of flashing. Zeke Berry had an incredible spring game. I think right behind him was Jair Hill. He just seemed everywhere. Going through my pictures and watching the replay, it just seemed like Jair was everywhere. And then you look at like a Jayshawn Barham. He was very good. Cole Sullivan, the true freshman, had a couple moments that I thought were really, really nice. DJ Waller, minus the drop, I thought looked really good as well. So I think that, like, top to bottom, you feel a little bit better coming off this spring game if you understand what you're looking at. So if you were one of those people that kind of were watching in real time the same way that maybe I was and was like, this doesn't feel like it's going that well, I think that you have to take a step back, and then, because I had to tell myself, like, I'm watching it like I would a regular game, and that's not how you're supposed to watch it. And I felt like coming back out of it, I said, okay, now I kind of have a handle on it. I'm supposed to be really kind of evaluating the depth pieces, who's kind of flashing in those lights. And I thought that the guys that we talked about yesterday, almost top to bottom, pretty much all gave you a moment that said, okay, that looked good. And ultimately, this really didn't feel like very dissimilar in any way with the cold, the blustery outside. It was mostly overcast, kind of boring, really honestly kind of boring. It wasn't like an exciting affair, but just kind of like, executing one way or another. You see those pieces kind of moving, then you realize like, okay, maybe that was exactly what you hoped to see. So we're going to continue talking about the spring game, and we are going to do so here in just a moment. Before we do, it's playoff time in the NBA and the NHL, and baseball is now in full swing, and FanDuel is the place to place your bet on every single game. So right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets. Win or lose, that's $150 for you to play with any bet. That's it. Any bet, new customer, you get $150 to play with. It's amazing. So bet on everything from slap shots, home runs, to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, super easy to use. And what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Now, here's the other thing. Let's keep it rolling here. We've all been there, whether you're a player or you're a fan. It's halftime. Scoreboard's not looking good. I think about how the Mays team probably felt being down 7-3 today. Feeling low. Not sure whether your team can pull out a win. That's when you dig deep. Lift up your head and say to yourself, it's time to get back in the game, pull off some bank heists, and take as much of my friends' money as I possibly can. Okay, I hope the Mace team didn't do that. But that's right, the Smash Hit mobile game Monopoly Go lets you compete with your friends on the most, richest, and the biggest empire. It's Monopoly you love, but on your phone anytime with tons of new twists, including leaderboards to compare your progress to your buddies. There's so much you can do. You can play on countless dynamic Monopoly boards. Make your friends bankrupt by smashing their landmarks with a wrecking ball. Charge other players for your iconic properties, and you can even work with your friends if you don't want to go against them. And you can crack open community chests in tournaments to get extra rewards and climb the leaderboard. So get back out there, put on your game face, download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or Google Play. I'm over here caffeinating at 9:30 in the PM because I got more work to do here after putting on Dune 2 and taking a little breather there. One of the things that I don't want to say it's enjoyment. It's not enjoyment. It's something else. But it's funny to me, and we're going to mention this here. I am not necessarily, I know we tweak at Ohio State relatively regularly on this show as of late. That is honestly not really in my MO in general. I am not a tweak the rivalry type of person. But today it felt kind of funny because this was not meant as a tweak, and yet Ohio State fans are up in my mentions on Twitter, very upset. Why are they upset today? Well, because I posted a picture of Tony Alford and Jordan Marshall with their arms around each other and simply said former Ohio State coach Tony Alford and Mr. Ohio Jordan Marshall wearing maize and blue. That is it. That is a statement of fact. There is nothing inaccurate about what I said, nor is any of it inflammatory. Some of the comments that I've gotten are absolutely hilarious. Other people, they use the terms like copium and things like that. Listen, I am not really a tweak the rivalry type of guy. But if Michigan gets a coach from, gets a coach from Ohio State, even if they get a big name player from the state of Ohio that Ohio State wanted, yes, I'm going to take a picture and post it. It would be the same with Michigan State. And you would see the same thing from photographers and reporters from those schools when those roles are reversed. It's not because you're tweaking the rivalry. It's because it's of particular fan interest for the fan base that you serve. So it's hilarious to see how many of them are just my comments, the comments on that aren't even from the Michigan fans for the most part. I thought like, yeah, it's going to get a bunch of comments. It's going to be Michigan fans, but like, oh, this is cool. I'm glad to have you. Yeah, good thing you're here. Glad that both of you are coming to Ann Arbor. Welcome. This is great to see. And that's probably where most of the likes come from. But it's hilarious that like the whole comment section are Buckeye fans just so upset. And some of them are be like, you took this dig. You thought you were doing something. It's like, what? Like, your reading comprehension, it doesn't track whatsoever. I'm sure there's going to be some of them in the comments. I don't know. I haven't read the comments on the show in like a month. I'm sure because the last time I have, it was still a lot of Buckeyes in the comments. So I'm sure it's probably the same thing again. So if you're one of those people who is triggered by that, I want you to take a look inward and recognize that you are being triggered by it, because simply pointing out that the accuracy that's Tony Alford on the Michigan sideline wearing maize and blue for the first time after having come to Ann Arbor multiple times as an Ohio State coach, that's something that is notable. Mr. Ohio football coming to Michigan is also something notable. All right, we spent way too much time on that. It was supposed to be like a 30-second like laughing thing, and I spent minutes on it because I find it hilarious. Let's get into I almost had to use the whole segment for this. When did we switch over? I should probably look that up real quick. I know I'm kind of screwing myself with this scrolling back, because usually it doesn't scroll back forward again once we do it this way. All right, 12 something. Okay, we got a couple minutes, so we'll keep on general thoughts, and then we'll get into like the players of the game. Excuse me, but that's I think that this was really, it's going to be hard to kind of wait for the season to come, but they're going to need all of this time. I do feel like coming out of this, they are going to need to go and get wide receivers. Just out of the sheer numbers, I say that with two of the players that impressed me the most today being wide receivers, and we'll talk more about them in a few moments here. But I feel like that's almost kind of it. Like kicker, receiver, I know they're not going to be really targeting a quarterback unless it just something happens to fall into their lap. The perfect guy hits the portal, and it kind of works out. I think they're going to go for receiver. I know I talked about Kyle Ford the last couple episodes. Don't expect it to be him. There are some other guys that Michigan likes more. I don't know who they are, but that's what I've been told. So expect them to target some guys at receiver. They need numbers, but I think at the same time, I think that was good to see with Kendrick Bell. And honestly, for the most part, the offensive line looked pretty good, especially considering a lot of the youth that's there. So I will be very curious to see just kind of how that kind of works out. And talking to some colleagues, like they're not as sure that, I had my starting five. I'm pretty sure this is it. And they weren't as sure about it. So I'm curious, but I thought like you didn't see many egregious mistakes. You saw some mistakes, but some of them were from some of the younger guys. Jake Mornera, not snapping the ball on the clap in the 2 minutes, as pointed out on the TV broadcast. Not something I noticed live. So credit where that is. But it felt like a lot of those guys held their own. I watched very specifically some of the matchups. There was one with Jeff Percy against Mason Graham. Jeff Percy playing inside instead of outside, and just completely like stonewalling Mason Graham. I think the thing that maybe helps Mason and Kenneth is that they usually play next to each other. Etta, who played mostly inside today, didn't necessarily show you much. There wasn't like a real big Etta moment. But again, the versatility, being in year two, he's feeling more comfortable. I think that all those things pay dividends. And then just the linebacker play, I just think was just very good in general. The team speed is something that really still stands out to me. It just all around, the defense still playing fast, still moving. And I think that leads me into something I meant to mention early on the top. This defense does not look any different, right? You saw Derek Moore dropping into coverage and swatting away a pass. So it really is like the same mentality. Like 2 plays later, you see Makari Page disguising and then coming on a blitz. Like they are going to do some things that are very reminiscent of what you saw. You might see more blitzes, but they're still going to disguise it. You still might see guys dropping into coverage. You're going to see different kinds of things kind of working together. And I think that is that's a really big positive. All right, let's go ahead and talk about my players of the game. And we're going to do that here in just a moment. Before we do, when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. Now, LinkedIn is not just a job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but might be open for the perfect role. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking at LinkedIn, you're looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional with LinkedIn. Now, LinkedIn is also constantly finding new and inventive ways to help you make this process a lot easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write your job descriptions, and that makes it so that you can just get in, get out, get the right person. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. That's linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions do apply. All right, players of the game, we kind of named pretty much most of them. I will start off with not even my player of the game, but I asked Jake Butt, I said, who is your, and I tried to get him on, but I mean, I asked him at like 9 p.m. Like, hey, you got 10 minutes to join? Maybe. Not a lot of foresight there, but I said, who's your player of the game? He said that he was extremely impressed with Zeke Berry. He thought Zeke Berry just had an incredible showing. I can't disagree. I went with Kendrick Bell for the reasons I stated earlier. Looked the part of the wide receiver, showed off speed, showed off hands, and a willingness to block. It seemed like I said earlier, there was a kind of maturity that he was lacking. Talking to him after the game, he's talked about leaning on his brother because he's like, well, I'd be stupid not to do this. I've only been a receiver for like 5-6 months, and he's in the NFL. But he's like, understanding what it takes. He's helping me do that. So that's really good. So I really liked Kendrick Bell. He really impressed me. Frederick Moore also had a really good day too, of course. When you look at, Moore had 2 catches on 4 targets for 76 yards. That's 48 yards after the catch. Kendrick Bell had 2 catches on 4 targets for 53 yards, both with a touchdown. So he had one long of 42 and a long of 48. Very impressive stuff from those 2 guys. Marlon Klein, I thought, looked absolutely phenomenal, as did Zach Marshall. And both of them, I didn't even look to see. Both of them led the blue team in receiving. 4 catches for Klein, 36 yards. 3 catches for Marshall, 24. But even there was a moment with Deacon Antonielli. He only had 1 catch, but it was a 35-yarder. It was like, okay, cool. That looks good. Running back, I mean, you got to give credit to Tavier Dunlap. I thought it was quiet, but he still ended up leading. But Donovan Edwards clearly was the running back that stole the show, even if he was only out there for 1 drive. Just looked vintage Donovan. Didn't necessarily break away for a big one, got close, but you know how Donovan is. That's not terribly surprising as far as that's concerned. So those were the, let's add in, obviously, Alex Orji threw with touch, threw with precision, ran the ball. I thought he made good decisions, and then tied with Davis Warren, who I also thought had a real good prescience as a pocket passer. I thought that those were the 2 guys that really were very impressive. When you look at, now I'm looking at the defensive stats literally for the first time right now because I didn't think to scroll down on the stat sheet. But I mentioned Cole Sullivan, who looked very good he had 3 tackles. He was kind of middle of the pack, but again, he's a freshman, so you don't normally expect that. He's not necessarily one of my players of the game, but I'm just singling him out. Jair Hill was kind of more my defensive player of the game. Like I said, he was everywhere. It only gives him 1 pass breakup, the one you saw, but it felt like he was just kind of everywhere that you wanted him to be. I thought he played very good. Makari Page, not unsurprisingly, one of those players that I thought played very, very well. DJ Waller minus the fumble after the interception. I thought he was in really good position. I'll obviously add my own Zeke Berry there. Ike Iwunnah had a couple moments that I was impressed with. He was one of those guys that was kind of generating pressure and really did some things that were good. Saw a couple good plays from Breon Ishmael. I think he's technically a defensive end, or I'm not sure if he's a linebacker or a defensive end, but a couple things from him that I thought were good. And I didn't mention Jayshon Barn, but man, this dude, he didn't even list it with a tackle. You can see that he's just a beast, an absolute beast. So very excited to see what he does more in a maize and blue uniform. He definitely looks the part. And lastly, because I forgot to mention, TJ Guy had several plays, and I felt very encouraged by his performance. Even though he had one sack, and Keyshawn Bennett, I didn't mention him, but he had 2 tackles for loss and 1 sack. But to me, the most impressive edge rusher that we saw, despite Keyshawn Bennett kind of leading the stat sheet, was TJ Guy. I think that the hype clearly proved to be real there. So I think that there's a lot of reasons to be excited about what this team presents, because like I said at the top, we are looking at the individuals. How do the individuals perform? Right? You're not looking at the whole, because of the fact of the way that this game was comprised of a draft and all of that. And you want to see, you're not looking for how is Colston Loveland playing. I mean, he got a couple of nice catches. You're not, you are looking for how Donovan Edwards is playing if he's in the game, because he had some struggles last year, and now he's going to be the guy. So that makes a little bit more sense. But you start to, you want to kind of look at more like, who are those guys who could be on the field on third down, on the field in the second series, the fourth series, guys that could be complementary receivers and stuff like that. So that's kind of the thing. And now I feel a little bit better about the current receiver room. I do still feel like they need bodies, but I feel better about it than I did about 12 hours ago. Okay. So that's a positive. I feel better about the cornerbacks that are going to be rotating in than I did 12 hours ago, outside of Will Johnson. I feel better about the safeties that are going to be playing in the absence of Rod Moore. And Quentin Johnson didn't dress. It's a kind of, he not technically he's on the team, but he's not on the team because he had declared for the draft, wasn't in school. So he's not really there. So, with those guys out, I felt like the safeties looked really good. I felt good about the structure of the defense, that these guys are able to still play fast. I felt good about the team speed, seeing the wide receivers run the way they did. I think that this could shape up. Again, it all depends on the quarterback play. It could shape up to be another surprisingly good season. This time it would be surprising. Last year was not surprising. We all knew what last season was about. This upcoming year, it might be a little surprising with the schedule and all of the losses and all of that stuff. All right, that's going to do it for us today. We'll be back on Monday. I believe we're having a press conference, so we'll cover some of that. But anyway, we did 5 this week. Very excited about that. It's been a minute doing things the way I'm supposed to do them. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thank you for listening. We'll be back soon. Peace.